ready to take your English listening to the next level.
Let's go!
Today, we're diving deep into real conversations, the kind you'd hear every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget those stiff textbook phrases. Think family chats, food debates, maybe even dreaming about vacations. It's like you're hanging out with friends and just soaking up natural English as they talk.
It's fascinating because you're not just passively listening. You're actively picking up new words, grammar patterns, and all those subtle expressions that make English come alive.
Right, and to kick things off, we're dropping right into a family chat.
Ooh, interesting.
Two people are comparing their families, and one describes theirs as tiny, while the other says theirs is average.
I see.
It's amazing how much those simple words tell us.
Absolutely. They create instant images in our minds and set the scene for understanding the family dynamics. But then they add another layer, right? Describing their families as close or silly or even loud.
I noticed that.
Those adjectives reveal personalities and relationships. Suddenly, we're getting a much richer picture.
Okay, so they both mention getting on well with their siblings. But earlier, one mentioned their family being a bit chaotic. How does that work?
That's a great point. It shows how getting on well with doesn't necessarily mean everything's perfect, no conflicts.
Right.
It suggests a baseline of affection and understanding, even with the typical sibling chaos. Those disagreements and rivalries, those are pretty much universal, especially when everyone's vying for attention.
So relatable.
Oh, totally.
It reminds me of how we use those comparative and superlative words like youngest and oldest without even thinking. They're such small words, but so important when you're describing families.
They are, and they come up naturally in conversations, which is exactly what you want to start doing as you become more fluent.
Now, get ready for a food chat.
Ooh, fun.
And they don't hold back on those frequency adverbs like often, sometimes, and never.
Those are so important for adding detail to someone's preferences, like their habits.
Absolutely.
Like, imagine the difference between saying, I often have cereal for breakfast versus I never have cereal.
Huge difference.
It paints such a clearer picture.
For sure. What really made me laugh was one person passionately disliking baked beans. I mean, isn't that practically a national treasure over there?
Right. You'd think. But this is actually what's so cool about learning a language. It's not just about memorizing the rules. It's about the culture behind the words.
I see what you mean, yeah.
What might seem strange in one culture can be completely normal in another.
So it's a reminder to be open to those differences, not to assume everyone shares our tastes.
Yeah. And that's true even for something as basic as food.
Let's move on to a conversation about friends.
Okay.
They use those informal terms like mates and pals, which instantly creates a relaxed vibe. It's like they're letting us in on their inner circle, and they really emphasize the importance of keeping in touch.
Oh, yeah. And that phrase takes on a whole new meaning these days.
Exactly. Think about it. Years ago, keeping in touch meant letters, phone calls. Now it's texting, video chat, social media. The way we stay connected has totally changed.
It really has.
But that core desire to keep those bonds is still there.
Exactly.
It makes you realize how language keeps up with our changing world. But some things stay the same, like the excitement of travel dreams. That's where this next conversation takes us.
Perfect. Pay close attention to how they use modal verbs like should and could.
Ooh, good catch. Okay.
They both express possibility, but there are subtle differences. Should is more like advice, you should visit Paris, it's beautiful.
I see.
While could simply offers options. You could go to Italy or Spain for vacation. These tiny words, should and could, can actually shift the meaning of what you're saying.
Like a secret code in the language.
Exactly.
And then they use this fun word, staycation, which I've definitely heard but never really thought about.
Oh, that's a blend of stay and vacation.
Makes sense.
It's about those times you choose to relax and explore your own city or area instead of going far away. It's gotten incredibly popular for all sorts of reasons.
I love that. Okay, ready for a change of pace? This next chat is all about work and careers.
That's interesting.
It gets into those tricky words since and for when talking about how long you've done something.
Ooh, yeah, those can be confusing, even for experienced English learners.
I believe it.
Remember, since is for a specific point in time, like I've been working here since 2015.
Okay.
But for is for a duration, like I've been working here for 5 years.
Got it.
Those small differences can trip you up sometimes.
They do.
But then they tell this hilarious story about chasing escaped goats.
I know, right?
Proof that even mundane jobs can have wild moments.
So true. Speaking of routines, let's listen to a conversation about everyday life. What stood out to you here?
Well, besides the genius use of the word hangry, which I think we've all felt at some point,
Definitely, yeah.
it was how they talked about the difference between habits and routines, something I'd never really thought about before.
That's interesting.
It's subtle, but important. Habits are things we do almost automatically, like brushing our teeth, making coffee. Routines are more conscious. It's a sequence of actions, often at specific times, like a morning workout or a bedtime routine.
It makes you realize how much structure we build into our lives without even realizing it.
It does.
Speaking of structure, this next conversation is about hobbies and free time.
All right.
They use last and next when talking about weekends, which seems simple, but it's actually super helpful for understanding the flow of their chat.
Absolutely. Those time markers give us context,
For sure.
and they use the phrasal verb take up when talking about starting a new hobby.
I heard that.
That's one of those expressions that sounds so natural when you hear it, but can be tough to remember on your own.
I feel that. Okay, on to a topic that dominates so much of our lives these days.
Yeah.
Social media. What stood out to you in this conversation?
The use of those adverbs of certainty. Maybe, probably, and definitely.
Okay.
They're so common, but carry important nuances of meaning.
True. Maybe I'll post something later. Has a completely different vibe than definitely posting this.
Exactly. And then there's the idiom catch up with, which used to mean meeting someone face to face, but now often means connecting online.
It's amazing how language adapts to our changing habits. Okay, let's shift gears literally to a conversation about getting around town.
I'm in.
I noticed how they use prepositions like towards and across when describing their commutes. Small words, but crucial for understanding direction.
They are. And those seemingly simple prepositions can actually be tricky for English learners because their usage can be quite specific.
It's all about practice and exposure,
Exactly.
like navigating a city, right?
Right.
And speaking of city life, they also used rush hour and traffic jam.
Of course.
Unfortunately, universal experiences, no matter where you live.
True enough. Okay, ready to switch gears and get informed.
I'm always ready for that.
Great. This next conversation is all about staying up to date with current events.
I'm all ears. What really struck me here was how they used to and enough, which seems simple, but are so useful for expressing, like, quantities or situations.
They are, like saying, I'm too tired to watch the news, or I've had enough bad news for one day.
Right.
They add emotion and intensity to your speech.
It's those little things that make English sound more natural. And then they talked about following the news, which can be overwhelming these days with so many sources and opinions.
Absolutely. We're bombarded with information, so it's more important than ever to be discerning about where we get our news and how we think about it.
Okay, time to drift off into the world of dreams.
Ooh, sounds dreamy.
This conversation is all about sleep, dreams, and sometimes those nightmares.
Listen for the word exhausted. It's like saying, I'm so tired I could sleep for a week.
Love that.
It's a stronger way to express extreme tiredness.
They also use the past simple and past continuous tenses to describe their dreams, which as a reminder that grammar's always at work, even in our subconscious.
Always at work, exactly. Now, let's change channels to those other dream worlds, the ones in movies and TV shows.
That's fun.
Notice how they use the present simple tense to describe plots and characters. It's like a convention of talking about stories. And they use the term binge watching, which is basically our modern viewing habit thanks to streaming.
True. It's amazing how language reflects our cultural trends. Okay, ready for something furry and adorable?
Let's go!
This next conversation is all about pets. What did you pick up here?
Well, how they used ever and never in questions and statements.
Okay.
Small words, but they completely change the meaning.
Right. Asking, have you ever had a dog is totally different from asking, have you never had a dog?
Exactly. And then there's the delightful word purr, which instantly brings to mind happy cats.
Okay, last but not least, let's head back to school.
Oh,
This conversation's about education and those early learning experiences.
pay attention to how they use the intensifiers quite very and really,
Right, listening.
often used interchangeably, but they have subtle differences.
Interesting. And then they use the term nerd, which has gone through a fascinating evolution.
It really has, from somewhat negative to more neutral, even positive in some circles. It's a great example of language reflecting how social attitudes change.
Okay, ready for one last dose of excitement?
Bring it on!
This final chat is about weekend plans and the anticipation of free time.
Ah, yes. Listen for how they use going to and might may to express their plans.
Hmm.
Different levels of certainty there. And that phrase, looking forward to,
So good.
it captures that feeling of excitement perfectly.
It's a fantastic way to end our deep dive on a positive note.
Couldn't agree more. It reminds us that even simple conversations can make us want to learn and explore new ideas. Speaking of exploring, our next conversation takes us into travel, those dream destinations people want to visit. I noticed they use the present perfect tense quite a bit here. Any thoughts on why that might be?
Hmm. That's a good observation. I think it's because they're talking about experiences they've had or haven't had yet. Like, I've always wanted to go to Japan or I've never been to South America.
Right.
It adds that personal touch to their travel talk.
Exactly. It connects the past to the present. It's not just a single point in time, it's how past experiences shape our desires and how we see things now.
Makes me wonder, what about you, listener? What places have you always dreamed of visiting? What experiences are on your travel bucket list?
Now let's dive into a chat about something that affects everyone, the weather. And of course, we can't talk about British weather without those classic exaggerations like boiling for hot and freezing for cold.
I love how dramatic they are.
Yeah.
That's like a performance about the weather. And then there's that word shower
Yeah.
to describe a short burst of rain. It's so much more vivid than just saying rain.
Absolutely. It paints a picture in your mind, Quick, refreshing rain comes and goes, loves everything, feeling clean.
I love that image.
It's a perfect example of how language can make you feel like you're experiencing something.
They also use those if sentences to talk about how the weather might affect their plans. Like, if it rains, we'll stay inside.
Right.
Or if it's sunny, we'll go to the park.
Yeah, that's such a common way to express possibilities and then make choices based on what might happen.
It is, and it highlights how those if sentences are essential for everyday life. Not just in English, but in any language, really. Speaking of navigating, let's listen to a conversation about getting around town. This one's full of useful words about transportation.
Perfect.
I notice they use public transport a lot, which is a good phrase to know, especially if you're in a new city. It covers all those ways to get around without a car: buses, trains, subways, trams, you name it.
It's a great way to experience the local culture, too.
Absolutely. And they talk about different modes of transport using by and on, like I go to work by bus or I love traveling on the train.
Right.
Simple but essential for describing how you get from point A to point B.
They are. It's all about those little building blocks of language. Now, get ready, because this next conversation is about something that can be a bit scary for some people: health and going to the doctor.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It's a topic that comes up in any language, especially when you're traveling or living somewhere new.
For sure.
Listen for vocabulary related to feeling sick, words like cough, headache, temperature, prescription.
All important ones.
Essential if you need to talk to a doctor or pharmacist.
They also use the modal verb should to give advice. Like, you should drink plenty of fluids, or you should get some rest.
It's a gentle way to suggest what might help, right?
It is, and it reminds us that modal verbs can express a lot of different things,
Right.
from advice to obligation to just possibility. Let's lighten the mood and listen to a chat about something everyone loves.
Music.
Okay, I love this topic. I was really struck by how they used adjectives to describe different types of music. Words like upbeat, melancholy, catchy, soothing.
I know. It's amazing how much emotion those words convey.
It's like they're sharing a part of themselves through their musical taste.
It is. It really is.
I also noticed they use the present continuous tense to talk about what they're listening to right now. Like, I'm currently obsessed with this new band. It adds a sense of excitement to their musical journey.
For sure. Now let's explore a topic that can be exciting and a little scary: learning a new language.
It can be both, for sure.
Notice how they use language learning verbs like study, practice, improve, and master. These are words every language learner uses on their way to fluency.
Right. It's like the steps we all take.
Exactly. And it shows that language learning is an active process. It takes effort, dedication, and a willingness to take on challenges.
It does. And they talk about all the different ways to learn a language: classes, online apps, immersion.
So many options.
It's a reminder that there's no one right way, just the way that works best for you.
Exactly. Finding resources and methods that fit your learning style and goals is key. Now, let's step into the world of fashion and listen to a conversation about clothes and style.
Fun.
I was fascinated by the adjectives they use to describe clothes: casual, formal, trendy, classic.
It's amazing how much those words say about personal taste and self-expression.
They do. Fashion can be a way to communicate, express your personality, and make a statement.
It really can. And they use comparative and superlative adjectives to compare clothes, like, this dress is more elegant than that one, or these jeans are the most comfortable I've ever worn.
Yeah,
It's a great example of those grammatical structures coming up in everyday conversation.
they do. Now let's talk about something we need to survive. Food.
The most important topic.
I love how they used words about cooking and eating like ingredients, recipe, bake, fry, delicious, flavorful.
Just hearing those words makes me hungry.
Me too. They really bring to mind the experience of taste and smell.
And they use some and any when talking about ingredients, like, do you have any onions? Or, I need some milk for this recipe.
Yeah, those little words are important for being specific about amounts or asking for what you need.
Absolutely. Now, how about a chat about something that can be relaxing and energizing, exercise and fitness?
I'm ready.
I was struck by how they used words for different types of exercise, like running, swimming, yoga, weightlifting.
Right, so many ways to be active.
It really shows how important it is to find activities that you enjoy that fit your life.
Exactly. And they use action verbs like stretch, lift, breathe, sweat to describe those physical movements. You can almost feel their energy.
I know, right?
And they talk about how good exercise is not just for the body, but for the mind, too.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of well-being, let's listen to a conversation about sleep.
The best.
I noticed all the different words they use for sleep habits. Things like early bird, night owl, insomnia, power nap. It's fascinating how different everyone's sleep patterns can be.
So true. And they highlight how important it is to find a sleep routine that works for you and prioritize getting enough rest.
Absolutely. They also use descriptive adverbs like soundly, peacefully, fitfully to talk about how they sleep. It adds so much detail.
It does. Now, let's shift gears and listen to a conversation about work and careers.
Okay, I'm ready.
Right away, I'm drawn to their use of words for different professions.
Hmm.
Doctor, teacher, engineer, entrepreneur.
So many paths people take.
It really highlights the importance of finding work that's meaningful to you.
It does. And they use those action verbs, work, manage, create, lead, to describe what they do on the job.
It's like you can get a peek into their everyday lives, see the challenges they face.
I know, it's fascinating. And they talked about work-life balance, finding that sweet spot between their careers and their personal lives.
So important. Speaking of personal lives, let's listen to a conversation about pets.
My favorite topic. I love how they use words for different types of pets. Dog, cat, bird, fish.
Right, so many different animals people welcome into their homes.
They really highlight that special bond between humans and animals. That unconditional love and companionship that pets bring.
They do, and they describe their pets' personalities using words like playful, affectionate, loyal, independent. You can almost picture them.
I know. I
Oh.
practically see them. And they talk about the responsibility of owning a pet. Feeding, grooming, exercise, vet visits. It's a big commitment.
It is, but it's also a source of so much joy. Now, speaking of joy, let's listen to a conversation about something that can broaden our horizons.
Travel. I'm always up for hearing about travel. I noticed how they used words for different parts of the travel experience. Flight, hotel, sightseeing, adventure.
Yeah, those words make you want to pack your bags and go.
They really do.
Yeah.
And they describe their trips with such vivid adjectives. Exotic, historic, breathtaking, unforgettable.
It's like you're right there with them, feeling the sand, tasting the food, hearing the sounds.
I love it. And they talk about both the challenges and the rewards of travel. Things like navigating unfamiliar languages and customs, but also making new friends and discovering amazing places.
Exactly. Travel can be transformative. It can really broaden your perspective and create memories that last a lifetime.
Totally agree. Now let's explore a topic that's essential for connection and communication language.
I love this topic. I was fascinated by their use of words about language learning, like vocabulary, grammar, fluency, accent.
So much to learn about language itself.
Like, it really is. And they talk about the challenges and rewards, like mastering pronunciation, getting the grammar right, but also understanding cultural nuances and those quirky idioms.
Those are the best.
There.
And they use such vivid verbs too, like speak, listen, read, and write to describe those different language skills.
It's like you can picture them practicing, trying to get those new sounds right.
I know. And they emphasize how important it is to find the right resources and methods, like language partners, online courses, or even immersive experiences.
Absolutely. The key is to make it work for you.
Totally agree.
They remind us that learning a language is a journey, not a destination. The most important thing is to enjoy the process.
And celebrate those milestones. Okay, let's switch gears and listen to a conversation about something that can be both entertaining and make you think. Books.
Books are the best. I love how they use words for different book genres like fiction, nonfiction, biography, and poetry.
Right. Books open up so many worlds.
They really do. And they
Yeah.
talk about that feeling of getting lost in a book, something I think we can all relate to.
Me too. And they use words that describe the physical act of reading, things like page turner, skim, devour.
Right. It makes it more vivid.
And they talk about all those different genres like thrillers, biographies, science fiction. Books can take us anywhere and show us new ideas.
They really can. Now, let's listen in on a conversation about technology. I'm struck by how they use words like cutting edge, user friendly, game
I
changer.
know, it's like technology has its own language.
It really does. And it shows how fast this field is changing. But some things are constant, like our need to connect with others. That's what this next conversation is all about.
I love how they use those warm, fuzzy words to describe their relationships with family and friends. Words like meaningful, supportive, cherished.
It shows just how important those connections are.
They really are. And it reminds us that language is about building those relationships. So we've listened to conversations about family, food, travel, work, hobbies, dreams.
So many things.
It's been a whirlwind of authentic English.
And we've seen how everyday conversations are packed with those little pieces of language that make communication work.
So what did this all mean for you, listener?
It means you've been immersed in the real thing, natural, unscripted English. You've gained valuable insights into how native speakers use the language.
It's like you've been listening in on the best dinner party, picking up new vocabulary, grammar, and cultural insights along the way.
And remember, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep that curiosity alive.
It's a reminder that nature is a source of peace, inspiration, and rejuvenation. And it's so important to preserve its beauty and diversity for the future, for everyone.
Well said. And speaking of preserving beauty, let's move on to a chat about art. I find it fascinating how they use those adjectives, like bold, subtle, abstract, even provocative, to talk about what they're seeing.
It's like they're painting a picture with their words.
Exactly.
It made me think about how art can cause such different reactions.
Oh, for sure.
What one person finds beautiful might totally confuse someone else.
Exactly. Art is so subjective and personal.
It is.
And that's what makes it so interesting to talk about. It reflects our own individual tastes, and experiences.
Okay, this next conversation is one close to my heart. It's about books.
Ooh, nice.
They talk about getting lost in a good book, which I totally get.
Me too. And notice those words they use about actually reading. Page turner, skim, devour. It's like they're adding a sensory element to the conversation.
It's like they're bringing that reading experience to life.
Exactly.
And they also talk about all those different genres. Thrillers, biographies, science fiction. It's amazing how books can transport us to different worlds.
They really can. And introduce us to new ideas.
Speaking of new ideas, let's listen to a conversation about technology.
Okay, let's do it.
I was really struck by how they use words like cutting edge, user-friendly, even game changer to describe the latest gadgets and apps.
It's like tech has its own vocabulary now.
It does.
It just reflects how quickly that field is evolving.
Totally. But then some things stay constant, like our human need to connect. That's what this next conversation's all about.
So true.
I love how they use those warm, fuzzy words like meaningful, supportive, cherished to describe their relationships with friends and family.
It highlights how important those connections are for our well-being.
They really are.
And it reminds us that language is really about building those relationships and nurturing them.
So we've gone through conversations about family, food, travel, work, hobbies, dreams. So much.
So much. It's been a whirlwind tour of authentic English.
It has. And we've seen how these everyday chats are full of those little pieces of language.
Yeah, like those words, phrases, grammar patterns that all come together to make communication flow.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for you, listener?
It means you've been immersed in the real deal, unscripted, authentic English conversations.
You've gotten those valuable insights into how native speakers actually use the language.
Right.
Like you've been eavesdropping on the most interesting dinner party ever. You've picked up new vocabulary, grammar, cultural insights.
And remember, the key is to keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep that curiosity alive.
So there you have it. a deep dive into the heart of everyday English conversations. We hope you enjoy the journey and feel inspired to keep exploring this amazing world of language.
Until next time, happy listening.